Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Mr. Lee Professional here, and I am the creator of Giant Monster Studios, and I'm here presenting with you a commentary on a Battlefront 1 modded map that I've had a lot of fun with called Shaddaa Vertical City. If you want to go see my review on that map, you can go check out the video in the description below. But beyond that, I'm going to be playing some Battlefront 1 and checking out this mod in full detail. As for the modded review itself, I usually just give a overall kind of like generalization of what I liked about the map and how it just works with the Battlefront 1 game mechanics. And we're actually going to go beyond that and explore kind of more that has to be offered with this map in terms of just its game mechanics with sides, and along with that, some of the modded campaigns I want to check out. So this is the Clone Wars era for the map itself, and I just want to say it's pretty typical of what you would find in a mod, but I really enjoy the texturing on the clones themselves because it actually has a little more variety compared to most Battlefront 1 modded maps, and some of it admittedly is Battlefront 2 reskins, but it's interesting to see some newer designs on them. Now, one of the more fascinating things about this map is that it actually contains a neutral side, kind of like Tusken Raiders on, I believe, the Tatooine Outpost map. I probably am getting that one incorrect here for Battlefront 1, and so you actually get to fight a neutral side that will basically attack you and the CIS side. And I'd like to mention about the gameplay for this map is that the classes are actually set up quite differently from most Battlefront 1 modded maps. Usually you would just have a fancy texture slapped on and you would just be the same old class, but with this mod in particular, you actually get a variety in different weapons and grenades, well, more so explosives in general, and secondary weapons to use for your characters. And if anything, I feel adds a whole new dynamic to the game itself. It's almost like you're playing some sort of I guess DLC, but I guess that kind of defeats the purpose of it being called a mod. But in a sense, yes, it is. It's basically like a free DLC, in a sense, because you get new weapons and it's just a variety you just don't see in most Battlefront 1 modded maps. As for example, right here, the sniper, he's able to fire a beam rifle rather than the single standard one shot, and we'll check that out later. But for now, I wanted to just kind of discuss the overall gameplay in general, and actually just provide commentary for a map that goes on for a whole fucking 30 minutes. I'm not making this shit up. It literally takes half an hour to finish this game. Don't mean to be so vulgar about it, but God, I mean, it is ridiculous. Yeah, there we go. Here comes the turmoil of running back from point A to point B. And admittedly, that's a problem with this map. It's just the distance seems so great to travel at times. But if anything, I want to say this is probably one of the more aesthetically pleasing Battlefront 1 modded maps, and if anything, the immersion in it is great because you really feel like you're in Nar Shaddaa, or more so this floating city in the sky in this industrial dystopian kind of looking planet. I haven't really looked into it, to be honest with you, despite me actually having the recording for the audio for the review for, I want to say, about a month, if you can believe that. So shame on me for not wanting to look into it, but school and other priorities kind of got in the way of that. So with that being said, moving on from the aesthetics of it and kind of just the overall gameplay, I just want to introduce myself to the channel, the idea behind Giant Monster Studios, and just talk in general Battlefront. So I guess we'll kind of get some of the more boring stuff out of the way. So as I said before, I'm Mr. Lee Professional, and as you may know me as Corey from the previous video that was uploaded on this channel, which was a Halo Wars playthrough, and that was quite entertaining, if I must say. I played with a couple of friends, and it was hilarious. If you haven't checked it out, sure, please give it a watch. It's quite funny. So with that being said, it's quite the entertaining Let's Play. So if you want to go check that out, go for it. If not, it's whatever, man. I don't really care. So one of the more, I guess, a little more background on myself, I should say. I'm actually been doing YouTube for the last 3 to 4 years at this point, I think, and I've never really got anywhere with it, and that's okay. But I think it's primarily what's affected me for the most part, which is having a consistent motivation. At one point in time, I did upload quite frequently, and I used to do Battlefront updates before the announcement of Star Wars Battlefront, because I was very inspired by a other YouTuber called Sir Tuggy Game Reviews. If any of you've heard about him, he's kind of more so the original Star Wars Battlefront, I guess you could say, supporter of Battlefront 3. In a sense, he was one of the few people actually doing anything related to that game, or more so asking for content from LucasArts, or a demand. I guess is rather, a demand, if anything, is more. I guess another way to put it. In a sense, he was one of the few YouTubers at the time actually supporting Battlefront 3, trying to get it made, getting the word out there, making videos on rumors, leaks, all that jazz. And they weren't necessarily any form of clickbait, as some people would assume, but rather he was making them for the purpose of getting the word out there, showing support for the game. And what he did was very special in the Battlefront community, because he helped unite people together and just bring it back, Battlefront, to, I want to say, a more supportive and active community. At sometimes there just really was no point in trying to get Battlefront 3 made, and what Tuggy did was just really revolutionize that. He set in motion what was honestly, I want to say, a change, a movement for people to say, hey, yeah, I really do want to see a Battlefront 3. Let's get it made. Let's make petitions. Let's start Facebook campaigns. Let's get the word out there. And without Tuggy, I personally feel that perhaps maybe the demand for the game wouldn't have been as great. Honestly, I mean, Battlefront could have just disappeared in existence, and it did really seem like that at a point. And if anything, I respect that guy. I mean, he's my inspiration, essentially, for what I do. So, with that being said, I guess that's kind of some backstory on my channel's content in general. I'm not really sure where I was going with that. I suppose I'm just on a nostalgia trip here playing Battlefront 1, but I guess I thought I'd share that with you guys. So yeah, with that being said, that basically explains my content in general. I do Battlefront, and I kind of going full circle here. The reason why I started doing it is because he left, and he stopped doing Battlefront videos, so I kind of just did the whole Battlefront updates thing. And it was cool and all, but I just lost the drive to do so once my computer broke initially. And I think at that time the YouTube algorithm really screwed me, and all these other Battlefront channels just came out of the woodwork once the actual game got announced, and that was it for me. Like, I never really came back from that. I used to get thousands of views on videos, and I ended up actually deleting those because I feel like it doesn't represent the editing, or more so commentary, I'm able to provide now. It doesn't reflect me well as a content creator, and that's kind of why I've gotten rid of those videos. Just looking back on them, or just more so remembering as they were never really well done. I never had a script. It was just kind of just a word of mouth almost, and it just seemed really unprofessional. And for somebody with a name like Mr. Lee Professional, you'd expect me to uphold to that. So, in a sense, I guess I felt like I needed to improve, and that's definitely what I did in the time that I wasn't making YouTube videos. I just improved as a person, and just in general, my technological skills, I just advanced so much. So when I came back, I was better, but admittedly it didn't really matter anymore because the algorithm just wasn't working in my favor, and it still isn't, and that sucks. But I like doing this as a hobby, and I love sharing my passion for a game that I just have so many fond memories with, and I just don't want to give that up. Essentially, I want to analyze Battlefront and say, this is what Pandemic did well with it. This is what DICE can do better. In a sense, I want to be a voice in reason with, I guess you could say, improving the game I enjoy, or have such I love so much, because for me personally, it's always been something that I can play with friends, or just in general with my brother. If anything, that's where my memories hold dearest, is that we would play Battlefront 1 and 2 for hours together, and it's such a great game, and I just want to return to that time when this game was just so simplistic and easy to play for practically anyone. There was just no crazy learning curve to it. Anybody could play Battlefront, it seemed, in my mind at least, but perhaps maybe not. I mean, looking on it when I joined the multiplayer back in its final days of Battlefront 2, not more so Battlefront 1, you can still find servers if you have specific means to do so, like Game Ranger, I believe, still holds them. up here and there, but they're mostly ran by people and their own connection, so it's a bit dodgy at best. But when I played Battlefront 2 for the first time online, it was just so mind-blowing because for years I had never been introduced to that. I always played with people on the couch, just good old couch co-op, and I love that. But Battlefront 2 online was just so different. I was literally stepping into a world of veterans that had me in a chokehold, essentially. Wait, why is he yellow? Anyways, and I couldn't beat them. They were really good players. Like, I mean, these guys had to have at least been playing Battlefront for the decade it's been gone. I mean, I'm sorry, within the decade that it's been gone. I mean, years on end. I mean, these guys, I'd never seen somebody so good at the game, and in a sense, I guess that's where the magic kind of died for me, because I realized that I guess you could get to a point to where a game becomes too overly simplistic, where there's not enough balance in between players for it to be fun. But then again, it's an old game, so that's, if anything, an excusable I guess not excusable observation, but rather just I shouldn't be over exaggerating that, because I wasn't there during its prime, during the earlier days when people were actually playing it online, and I guess it would have been easier for me. But I guess in the long run, what I'm trying to get at here is that when you're developing a game like Battlefront 2 and 1, the idea behind them is that they wanted to make a Battlefield but set in the Star Wars universe, and if anything, it's basically that, once you think about it, but it's a more dumbed down version, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to anyone. Well, Jesus Christ, R2-D2. Oh, it's a monster. I'm not going anywhere near that thing. Jesus. Anyways, so moving on from that. God. That's what I love about this map. It's got all those little quirky Easter eggs in there, man. There's even like a picture of Luke Skywalker in one of these rooms. Hold on, let me check it out real quick. So, yeah, moving on from that. The thing is with Battlefront 1 and 2, I feel like they were just more simplistic versions of Battlefield. In a sense, that's what made it accessible for players at the time, is that you were able to enjoy a game that was similar in gameplay to a very not competitive, but team-based shooter, and especially with artificial or dumb AI that basically Battlefront 1 and 2 has. It's enjoyable for the player in the sense that they're rewarded for killing enemies that may not necessarily be I guess player-to-player combat. So in a sense, it's more of a reward factor in the game, and that's something that I've noticed about like studying game mechanics and just understanding what makes multiplayer shooters work, is that when you reward the player like that, it makes them it just helps them enjoy the game better overall, because they're not having to be pressured by these I want to say competitive aspects of the shooter itself. So the AI kind of relieves some of the, I guess, challenge, I guess you could say, against player-to-player combat. It's a bit hard to explain, I guess, but it's more so of an observation. I'm not really sure how to put it on words. I really need to get back to reading the books that I got into over game design and stuff like that. But I guess perhaps I'm not explaining it the best of ways, but basically you want to reward the player for actions that are contributing towards the team or the objective in order for them to have fun, essentially. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people are missing nowadays in games in general, is just having fun with it. Because one thing I've noticed with Battlefront's initial release is that the complaint was the lack of content and the fact that there was a lot of missing game modes or specific things that are not things, but that sounds horrible. Things, not things. That doesn't make any sense. No, but I mean, in a sense, people wanted more game modes and content in general on Battlefront, and I think the idea behind that is that a lot of people are missing is that the originals didn't necessarily have as much as you would like to remember or think. I think there's kind of a herd mentality behind this romanticization of space battles and how crazy they were, and how fun and addictive they must have been. But I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Space battles are probably the most boring aspect of Star Wars Battlefront 2. I remember me and my brother would skip space battles immediately all the time on Battlefront 2's campaign, and just in general we hated playing them because they were so just tedious. You'd enter the ship, get destroyed by the auto turrets, and for some reason the auto turrets in the spaceships were the hardest AI in the game. It made no sense to me whatsoever why they were, but that just didn't make any sense. So just for me in general, I don't like space battles. I'll never understand the fascination with them. Perhaps because they could be so much more in the sense from like space to ground. I understand that. Yeah, totally. That's cool. I wouldn't mind that. But the idea of having like a, how do I say this? Having the idea of wanting to have space battles and the new Battlefront just doesn't make any sense to me, because you're dealing with a game developer that of course has dealt with aerial combat in their Battlefield series, but introducing like a space to ground transition in the Frostbite engine, I believe it would be pretty easy. But I think the issue here is that there's no real way to figure out how to balance that gameplay with initial release like Battlefront. Because if you look at Battlefront 1 by Pandemic, they had aerial combat, but they didn't have space. Modders eventually added space battles in Battlefront 1, but they weren't that really good, to be honest with you. I mean, the physics was broken in it. You would be able to land in free space, basically. And I literally mean free space. Like, in the vast void of space, you literally would land on the ground. It just didn't make any sense. So, with that being said, I can't help but feel like there's just this romanticized idea of space battles. And perhaps that comes from a lot of Free Radicals canceled Battlefront. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, that's, I guess, I feel Free Radicals Battlefront is just a good idea of what Battlefront from DICE should have been. And if anything, what that game showed us is that they were able to take the Star Wars Battlefront concept and really expand upon it. And I think the sad thing is about the new Battlefront is that it seems like they looked at the older games and said, you know, how do we make these individualized from our Battlefield series? And that's kind of what they did. In a sense, that's what took the fun out of it, because you basically get this watered-down third-person shooter that isn't necessarily as fun to play as the Battlefield concepts behind it that were implemented in the first two games made by Pandemic. And perhaps I think that's where the community got off on a bad foot when demanding for a game that wasn't going to be like Battlefield in general. That community backlash towards wanting a Battlefield shooter is what made Battlefront what it is. This watered down third person, and it's third person shooter. And the thing is, it's just weird for me to see these people's reactions to the new Battlefront and be like, well, what happened? And in a sense, it's kind of the community's fault. Not so much so I want to say, veteran players, because a lot of them understood, and kind of going back on Tuggy, that this was going to be a different game, and they wouldn't have minded seeing a different game as long as that there was something new to it. And I think the issue here is that when you look at Battlefront 1 and 2's original gameplay, again, it was heavily based off the DICE Battlefield series, the originals, of course. I think one of the major issues that you face in that community is that the new generation of players, or more so just the new generation with shooters, they didn't want to have a Battlefield game, essentially. And the funny thing is, that's what made the originals. And now it's kind of like it's almost a complete reverse. Now we want a Battlefield Star Wars, in a sense. And there's just a lot of irony in that, because what DICE listened to the internet, and they made a game based around basically their complaints on not wanting a Battlefront shooter, and I went in a complete circle. And I can't help but feel that that backlash is what initially made what Battlefront from DICE is today. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's more so a lesson for developers to make sure that they're listening to the right fan base, because I can't help but feel, again, that that backlash was very negative in the beginning. It's almost as if you hear EA and you immediately say, oh, don't do this shit or don't do that shit, and instead you're not really giving them that positive input that they need in order to make the game that players want. It's almost as like they're scared to try something new, and that's what I feel like Battlefront was initially came out to be. It was just a game that was playing it safe, essentially. There's nothing innovative about it compared to the originals in terms of its class-based gameplay. The new game, of course, allows you to choose a different set of blasters for the start of each match. You can choose a set of star cards, and that's about it. And that's basically the gameplay. I mean, you don't have much room to construct a class based around how you want to play throughout the game. But in a sense, that kind of keeps it balanced, depending on how you want to look at it. Because of course, if some players have X amount of cards, they can be more effective in general towards the enemy team. So it all depends on how you want to look at it. I believe the star card system works okay. I think there's some improvements that need to be made with it in order to counteract certain enemies, or more so just in general other players, because it seems that there was almost this weird unbalance in the beginning of its launch, and if anything, that's changed for the most part, but I can't help but feel that there's still a few more changes that need to be made in order for the game to be more well-rounded, personally. But the content, of course, is still being produced, and I can't be more happy for that, honestly. The Battlefront free DLC that they released is actually quite enjoyable, but if anything, it feels a little rushed. I'm gonna be honest. I can't help but feel that this was one of those last-minute things, a contingency plan, if you will, to release content just in case things kind of went south for the launch of Battlefront. And I've kept up with its development, more so just in general, anything to do with Battlefront up until its initial release, and I can't help but remember that there was this, like, DICE, or EA Investors call they did a few months prior to E3 for Battlefront, or just in general EA games coming out within the next year. And the real selling point of that conference was that Battlefront was going to increase the stock value of EA, and then, it was, prices were going to rise, it was going to be great. Everybody's going to be making their money. The investors, all that jazz. But, of course, what ended up happening with Battlefront, it didn't do too well initially upon its release. It wasn't the best of sales, yada yada yada. And so, that free DLC was announced a little, I want to say, post the initial launch of Battlefront, if I remember correctly. And Peter Moore himself, I think, even tweeted that out. And it's so funny to just think that they were talking so highly of, like, this new product, more so partnership with Disney. And then they go off and say, oh, no, free DLC, more content, don't worry about it. It's almost like this was planned if things went badly, or perhaps this was just something they pulled out of their ass, if you want to put it bluntly like that, and just because they were trying to cover their assets and their investors' money into the game, they more or less did something like that. And I can't help but feel that that's perhaps what happened towards the, I want to say, post-release of Battlefront. And perhaps that's just some, how do I say this correctly, some weird theory, I guess you could say, but that's what it seems like to me. And I can't help but feel that's what it probably is, more or less. It's just unfortunate circumstance where the game just didn't release as good as they wanted to, and so now they have to basically make content that wasn't initially planned. Like, take the first DLC for Battlefront, for example. That obviously was going to be included in the game. I mean, it's just, there's no question about it in my mind. I just can't help but feel that DLC specifically was going to be included in the game, because it's so similar to the environments we already have in Battlefront. It just doesn't make much sense for them to include anything else similar to that. But I guess maybe I'm being a little too hard on DICE. I mean, I understand that they've got to meet a deadline, in a sense, for content that they've got to make per year. And the funny thing is, DICE in Sweden, I don't believe they're making content for Battlefront at the moment. I believe it's the LA studio, but I'm not really sure who at the moment is actually developing which DLC, but it more or less is DICE Sweden. So it all varies, really. But moving on from that, I kind of want to get over this whole DICE topic. I feel like I've rambled on for it long enough, and to be honest with you, this gameplay is probably going to be over here pretty soon. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and jump on towards, in general, what Giant Monster Studios is, and kind of the overall end goal, or for me anyways, for the content on here on this channel. And the idea is that you, the viewer, can choose what you want to see. Per the end of each month, we'll probably end up releasing some sort of survey. You can just fill that out. We'd more than gladly appreciate it, and I wouldn't mind throwing in some prizes of my own money in there, just in case. If that's a source of motivation for any of you to want to complete it. I'm not sure what I want to do yet for prizes, but I assume like an iTunes gift card, Microsoft points, hell, probably even gold. I mean, it's just something I wanted to see, statistically speaking, how to build a better YouTube channel, in a sense. And I hope you understand that this is because I just committed suicide. Wow. I hope you Jesus Christ. I hope you understand that the idea behind this is to just build a channel that you, the audience, wants to watch, but still at the same time maintaining content that I, my friends, and other people who are part of Giant Monster Studios would like to make as well. So with that being said, our content will primarily consist of machinima, more or less short animations, depending on where that goes here within the next month or two, and gameplay commentary like this. But hopefully my friends can be a little more entertaining than I am. I hope I haven't been rambling on too much about Battlefront, but of course, considering I'm the guy who loves this game very much, I don't really see the issue with these things, something like that. And that's what I want to keep Giant Monster Studios to be. It's just this really cool just channel filled with different content, in a sense. I don't want it to be this run-of-the-mill, like, hey guys, Minecraft Kid here, we're gonna be playing Battlefront because it's what makes money. But, you know, that's just like, I don't like that. I don't like that sense of mentality that YouTube has to be a job. It feels so... It feels so crooked to me. I don't know. It just doesn't sit well waking up and knowing, oh god, I gotta make another video and just, you know, put on my happy face for these people. Like that, I don't get how people can do that with YouTube. It blows my mind, man. Like, I've seen, you know, people who, like, Let's Players and stuff like that. You know, how can you just consider this nothing but a job? And I'm not talking about the big Let's Players. Those guys, you know, they did it as a hobby. It was something they did more or less to pull themselves out of a hole, whether it be depression and economic struggle. It's just they have a reason for doing it because that's what they enjoyed to do. It was a hobby. They built it up, and it was fun to them. And that's what I want to do. I just want to have fun with making these videos. I don't want to be this machine that's pumping out content because it's the next paycheck. And that's what I don't understand about YouTubers who provide, I'm sorry, not provide, but who go all in on making a YouTube channel for a career. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, what happened to just doing this as a hobby? And I can't help but feel that's what dehumanizes YouTube nowadays, is that you no longer have these people behind the computer. There's just these machines making content day in and day out for the next paycheck, essentially. It just, that's why I don't want to work with, like, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that that's kind of my excuse for not wanting to work with as many people as I used to, because I can't help but feel like it's just this big competition, and I don't like that, because in real life, YouTube is just not, I mean, I don't consider it a realistic job for myself, because I know I could be doing so much better in all these other skills I know. And then, you know, and if you want to do YouTube as a job, I'm not discouraging it. Go for it. It's what, if it what makes you happy, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Go for it. If you want to do YouTube as a job, I'm not discouraging that. But I'm saying in general, I don't understand people who compete as hard as they do for this website. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I just like doing this as a hobby. Oh, Jesus, what the hell is that? Oh shit, what did I walk into? It's an ambush. Shit. Alright. I lost my train of thought for a second. I've ran into that thing once. It scares the living hell out of me. I don't know what it is. Please tell me what alien it is. It looks like it's from the Andy Tartakovsky Clone Wars. Jesus Christ, man. So, yeah, moving on from that. Just in general, I don't understand the competitive nature of YouTubers nowadays. And I'm not talking about big YouTubers. But still, of course, they've got to make a living, and you'd expect them to just be as competitive as anybody else. But I'm saying lower, kind of like 100 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers. I don't understand their mentality towards wanting to do this immediately as a job. It's just, it's such a weird idea, a concept in my head to want to go all in for something like this. Because I'm just saying, in the real world, there's so much you can be doing beyond YouTube. I personally, and perhaps this is just because I'm discovering so much in kind of my career with computer science and just in general 3D modeling, I found that there's just this, there's so much more to do in life, and I can't help but understand why you'd want to do YouTube. It's just such a weird, wacky, I don't know, job, if anything. It's the first of its kind. nobody's ever really seen anything like this before. It's this age of the internet that I think is going to be decisive for what we consider morally right, in a sense. Like, we're living in a period where YouTube is being just observed by society, and we're trying to see if it's justifiably, like, in this moral sense, what we want to accept as a job, or just as careers, or a way of lifestyle, if you will. I mean, you can practically learn almost anything on YouTube, and I guess that's what I'm trying to fall into the category of. It's like, do we want to accept this internet website as part of our culture, our society? And in a sense, it already has been, but its impact, I think, is still yet to reach that peak. Perhaps it already has, and I have yet to understand or see that it has. But I believe that as YouTube continues on, it'll continuously it'll develop as a website, and I think after a while, once the smoke clears, it'll just be a better content, just like a better place to find content in general, because at the moment it's just in this weird experimental stage. Probably that's I think perhaps that's what bothers me the most about it. But I believe we're at the end of the video at this point, so I think I've rambled on enough about random stuff and some life here and there, I suppose. But I hope I wasn't coming off as being too arrogant, I guess, in the beginning of there with the whole YouTube algorithm there. But what I'm trying to get across here is that I just enjoy doing this as a hobby. Is what I'm trying to say primarily. It's fun, and if anything, I just hope you guys enjoy watching what I do as a hobby. And in that sense, what I'm trying to get across is that I don't like the idea of this as a job, and I hope you understand that videos are produced on more so my own accord, and in a sense, I appreciate people who want to watch what I do, because I find it enjoyable for myself. So thank you for watching. This has been Mr. Lee Professional, and I'll see you on the Battlefront.